Good morning. Welcome to the CPS District Ag Lab here at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. College Prep. Today we are going to load our tower gardens, and Michelle Newman-Brooks and me, Julie Hunnefeld, will be kind of tag teaming as we do this.
Great. So the first thing we need to do, and this is when you're either in initial loading or you're refilling the tank, is always make sure that your tank is full. So here is our tower garden tower that's been cleaned and reset, and we've filled it. The instructions call for it to be, so here's the reservoir. Let's talk about the parts of the system really quick. We have the tank or reservoir, we have the tower, we have the light system, and then our pods. We have regular pods here, and then we have herb pods. And so this is the lid here, cover to your tank system, and that's where your pump also lives as well. And the instructions call for it to be loaded no more than an inch from the lip of the top of the tank. So the top of the tank's lip is here, and pardon me, light. And so I pre-filled it here so we can see, and I probably need to add some more, to be honest with you. So measuring from where the top of the water is now to the lip, I'm right now at about 6 inches. So I do need to add more water. I probably could have did it that way. So right now the water level here, you feel for the lip, measure where it is on your ruler. I'm 4 inches, which is not too bad. So we'll no more than 2 inches from the lip. If I said 1 inch, I was incorrect. 4 is not bad. So anywhere between 2 and 4 is ideal. That prevents overflowing from the seam where the lid of the reservoir and the reservoir meets, because eventually roots will begin to grow and live in your water, and it will raise the water level. And also when the pump is circulating, you don't want any of the water to overflow or splash out. So that's the tank being filled. So the pump lives here down in the water, and it's stuck to the bottom of the reservoir. And you always want to make sure that your pump is functioning before you load your system, because if you turn it on, it doesn't work. You have to unload everything. So here is the timer for the pump, and it could be either O, depending on the type of timer you have. So our timer is a Tower Garden brand tower pump timer. Say that 3 times fast. That comes with the pump. And so O is for outside and I is for inside. So for this particular test, it doesn't really matter. You just want to turn the pump on. So just push the button. And then I'll turn on the light here, so hopefully you'll be able to see the water. Oh, it's not plugged in. So if you hear the water flowing and you want to check to make sure that there are little emitters at the top, this top layer here is your emitter portion, and you want to make sure that you're seeing all the emitters flowing down in a nice constant stream, and that you can see water hitting each one of the reservoirs, which is each layer has a different emitter to be able to channel the water, and then you see a nice even flow in with the pump. So also it tends to splash, so when you're checking your pump and there's nothing in there, please make sure you put the lid back on there to prevent spillage or slippage from any of our little babies in the classroom. So that is how we check the pump. Great.
So with any of these indoor systems, whether they're hydroponic or aeroponic, you need to make sure that you have nutrients in the tank. Because we just have water flowing and no soil. Soil is usually where the nutrients are held. This time the nutrients are going to be held only in the water. This is an aeroponic system, so water and nutrients are just trickling down onto the roots. And it's really, really important just to follow the instructions very carefully that come with whatever product that you have. So for ours, we have mineral blend A and mineral blend B, and it tells you how much you need per gallon. So this is a great thing for you to do with students, is to do the math with them to figure out what the right quantities are for each of the mineral blends compared to how many gallons of water they have in the tank. So for ours, I've already done the math, and we have 16 gallons in that tank. We need 20 milliliters of each blend, which is 320 milliliters, or about a cup and a half. So, and we have this measuring cup here. The instructions also tell me that I need to put on gloves and eye protection. So I'm going to do that. And none of these, thank you, assistant. None of these are super harsh. It's just mineral stuff. However, we want to be really safe. So I'm going to shake this up. That's what my instructions tell me to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in a cup and a half of this. So that's 1 cup. Then it's going to pour right into the tank. Here's my half a cup.
And Julie, is that measuring cup marked so that you can read it, or did you pre-mark it? Or are you estimating?
It is marked, and it has cups and it has milliliters on it, so you can look either way. So very important that you have a simple organizational system to remember that you did this one, and you're going to set it aside and then go ahead and do the other one.
Do you need to rinse the cup out before you do the second mineral blend, or is it okay to just use the cup as is?
It is fine to use the cup as is, but it is not fine to mix them together like in a larger measuring cup. You don't want to mix the two together and then pour it in, but it's okay if there's a little residual.
Okay, so you should always add one after the other. What would happen if you did B before A? Or does that matter?
I don't think that matters. That should be fine. So after we do this, then we're going to run the pump so that we can make sure that everything blends together. And then after 15 minutes or so, then that'll be a good time for us to check our pH. But we're going to pause on that part for right now. Okay, and just like any fertilizer that you would add in your garden, there are always 3 numbers telling you what the nutrient blend is. So in this one, you see that it's 013. We refer to that as NPK. So that's a good chemistry thing to know. The N is nitrogen, the P is phosphorus, and the K is potassium. And you'll see that that's a little bit different on this one, that this one is 200. So we've got more nitrogen and then no phosphorus or potassium in this blend.
Great. So now that our pump is tested, our water is ready, we're going to start getting our rock wool cubes ready to load into the tower. So these were planted on December 11th, so almost a month ago. As you can see here, some germinated, some didn't, which is why you should always really seed heavy and seed a lot, because you don't know how much is going to survive. You don't know what the circumstances are of your planting situation. And these were going over Christmas break. And so during Christmas break, we were not in the lab as often, and as I'm sure some of you teachers were not in the classroom. So we still have plenty of plants here to be able to load into our tower. So for the tools, I think it's best to be able to do this since you have nice clean lines. What we've recognized in previous classes is when you break the rock wool, the edges get jagged, and then you have to kind of shove them into the system, and it just doesn't make for beautiful aesthetic looking load. And also the rock wool can break off and fall into the reservoir, and then it can begin to clog your pump. So there's 2 things you can use. A ruler. Can you get the shorter one out of the thing? This is a 18-inch ruler, but this is a metal ruler, which works really well because it can also double as a cutting device. And then I also have an X-Acto knife here. So when you're working with students, please be careful when using an X-Acto knife. It's very sharp. You probably could use a butter knife, but I don't think it'll give you the cleanest edges possible. So X-Acto knife or a ruler these metal rulers really work well. And so here, the rule of thumb when loading is to think about how the plant is going to grow over time. And so when you're loading, if you have things that trellis or flow, you want to plant those at the bottom of the tower, and things that kind of have really great turgor and stick up or grow upwards, you have at the top. Because you don't want trellising plants to grow over and crowd out towering plants. And you can make adjustments to the light, but the towering plants you can usually adjust and train is what we call to grow in a certain direction so it's not taking out the light. So two things you want to be concerned about is crowding out, the plants crowding out each other, and then the access to light. So these here is our flower tray where we had calendula, nasturtium, and zinnia. And nasturtium definitely trellises, and it'll be beautiful at the end of when it's fully grown. And so we're going to plant those at the bottom. And we need to make sure also when you're planting trellising plants that you have access to the water lid so that you'll be able to fill the water over time. So I am going to cut out, which one is which? We'll start with the zinnia. And now you can see that they've started to entangle themselves, so be very gentle. Plants are resilient, they'll come back, but if you get rid of they need leaves to reproduce. So if you snatch out all the leaves, or if you break a stem, that cuts off the nutrient availability because the plant needs the stem to be able to absorb nutrients. And these are babies still, so be very gentle with them. So here I'm going to use my X-Acto knife and just cut a straight line. And the rock wool's soft, so you don't have to use much force. But I'm going to cut right down the center of each row. I think I'm cutting the nasturtium right now because here's the zinnias. Yeah. So and I'll pull them out so you can see the difference in the plants and how you're able to get the good plants from the bad plants, or the ones that didn't germinate. So I'm going to use the ruler to pull it out. And again, also, please make sure that your students are using gloves. Rock wool is a product made from blown glass, so it can leave shards of glass, remnants in the hands. It can get cut. I don't know about you, but I've been cut by rock wool before.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's irritating.
it is as an irritant. So, and then if some of these are not ready to go, you can always just cut them out and let them go again. So here we have in this cube 3 that didn't make it. But this is one of the ones who did. So we could toss these and then pull out the rest of the row.
And Michelle, when you are making decisions about which plants to keep, about how many, how do you decide how many you want to keep for your tower?
Well, I would say depending on the growth of the plant and how the plant grows, you don't want to fill every pod because that will also crowd out the tower, right? So sometimes leaving a pod empty is to its benefit. So for plants like nasturtium that will get huge, I'll probably load every other. So each layer has 4 pods. So I'll load 2 and leave 2 empty. And then if I load the same plants on the next row, I would stagger it. So if I'm doing, and you'll see on the tower that the pods themselves are staggered. So if I load this one here, I'm going to load this one here, as to make sure that they're not crowding each other out or they're on top of each other. Great question, Joe. And so for these zinnias, which some of them survive, so we're going to first cut them out. And it's like I said, it's great to just save some, just in case your plant doesn't survive, or if you want to donate them to a friend, or if you have multiple towers. if you want to save them for a reload later. So as you can see, just to show you the importance of why we use a knife versus tearing them, I'll tear these. So if you tear it, see how the edges are frayed and jagged? And if we go to put that into the pot, these little shards can come off and just doesn't make for a nice clean look.
Michelle, I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate.
Ooh.
This is between Michelle and I. She is very precise in most things. And I am much more imprecise.
Guilty.
I know. So I think there is a style difference here. And if you don't mind the jagged edges, I think it probably, or if you want students to be just breaking it with their fingers and not using an X-Acto knife, you can probably experiment with that.
It's not mandatory, but yes, for my desire to have everything perfect and to have clean lines, you do not have to buy into my madness. This does take quite a bit of time, but it's also my Zen place. So I get to do this without students, and so the joy of cutting these so precisely just feeds into my madness. But if you want to break them off, you're perfectly fine to do so. So I don't want to put the fear of jagged edges. That's a singing group, not necessarily.
Right. Well, and you could also pre-cut them for students, I guess, too, and then they could load them if you want.
That's true. That's a great point. They can be pre-cut before you plant them, making for an easier, more seamless load at the end. So because the trays have barriers, you won't have to worry about that. So, question for you, Julie. Do you think it's a good practice to take off the damaged leaves? Or this one is a damaged plant, actually. Would you load that in, or would you save that?
I think I would not load this one. What I'm seeing is it ended up getting kinks right here. And so because we have so many other really great plants, I probably would set this one aside.
Okay.
But yeah, you definitely can, any of the leaves that have not made it, those can be taken off very gently so you don't damage the rest of the plant.
So do you want to talk about, since we do have a kinked one, talk about like the difference between of what you feel like a successful start would be versus one that you think may not make it because of that while I'm cutting?
Yeah. So generally what you want to look for with plants is that the stem looks thick and strong. Sometimes we'll see that if a plant gets really too like tall and stretched out, that we often call that being leggy. Or stretched or etiolating, and so that's like etiolating. I hope that's right. So then that's a weaker plant. So kind of the shorter, thicker stem, the better, and then the look of the leaves. So you want them to be like a nice, like deep green color, with as few dead leaves as possible.
Okay. Now, what if, for example, since we're still using these, now when we talked about seeding, we did multiple seeds in a pod, and what we did not discuss was thinning. And so we haven't gotten to the leafy greens yet, but I do see a couple of ones here that have multiple plants. Do you want to talk about the importance of thinning prior to loading?
Sure. And with these systems, it's a little bit different versus like growing outside in a garden. So depending on what you have, like if you have a leafy green or some of the herbs like cilantro or parsley, it's fine to have like 3 or 4 plants growing out of the same cube. However, if you have something like this nasturtium, a cucumber, a tomato, anything that's going to be a much bigger plant, then you just want one. So the best way to thin things out is with a really like sharp scissors, which I don't have on me right now. But Michelle can find one. And really what you want to do is you can just snip the stem. Okay, so here I have a really sharp snips, and I'm just going to go in and snip that off as low as I can, making sure not to damage the plant that I want to keep. I don't have to pull it out. If I pull it out, I might damage the root structure of the plant that I do want to keep. So with this nasturtium, we're just keeping one. I think with zinnias, we probably can keep two.
Maybe get it a little bigger and just see if it gets to get
Yeah.
crowded, or if one of the plants is weaker, then you can remove that. How do you know which start or which plant to send? Well, how would you choose?
Okay, so then this is kale. So this is another one. These are all relatively leggy. So I'm going to just take probably the tallest one with the thinnest stem to take out. You can also look at the number of leaves. So each plant will have a set of true leaves, or a set of seed leaves that come out first, and then true leaves that look a little bit different than that. So that's one way that you can look too. But so this is the longest. Doesn't have the same color as these other seedlings, and so I'm just again gonna go and snap right there. So I think for kale about 3 is probably good. Again, once they get big and if they start crowding out, once they're in the tower, then you can just literally harvest one of them and use that for food and let the other 2 grow.
So here we have. So thank you, Julie. Quick question before I go to the next thing. Do you think it's a good idea, because you know some of our seeds didn't germinate for various reasons? Do you think it's a good idea to keep and reuse rock wool, or toss them and start over?
I think you can probably try it as long as it looks like it's in good condition still.
Right, and I agree. So here's an example of one rock wool cube that I wouldn't keep versus one that I would. So the difference for these are bean. What kind of beans were they?
Bush beans.
Bush beans. Thank you for remembering. So out of our bush beans that we started, only one survived. We did have a leggy one. It's in here somewhere. But and I think maybe the seed is just too big, or we didn't need to put the vermiculite on top. So maybe we'll try next time without the vermiculite. But if you can see here, if we can get a close up to the 2, we have one pod here, and the seed's probably still going to be in there. If I dig it out, can I use that measuring spoon? So if I dig it out, so there's the vermiculite, and the seed carcass has disintegrated in there. So it doesn't, oh, there it is. So that's the kind of the seed that didn't make it. But the pot itself is still, it looks fine, right? So you could clean that out and reuse it. But this one here looks like it has a little mold, and it's because the seed, feel free to keep that on camera if you want. But that, oh God, that mold and the fact that the seed did not do well and left all this, that just is not going to be a healthy pod to start a new seed. So that's a good way to determine whether or not you want a reusable pod versus one that you should not reuse. That's super gross. But here, look at this healthy seedling. You see nice root structure here. The roots are white. So what you want to see is white roots. That shows healthy roots. The stem is nice and strong. What we call has good turgor in the leaves. The leaves don't look all lanky and sad. So this is, and Julie's she's got her snips out because she wants to snip that bad leaf so bad. So I'm gonna let her go ahead and do that. It's going to snip, and that's one of the first leaves, looks like. But this is a really good, healthy plant. And this is one, since it's a bean plant, we're going to plant these alongside the nasturtium. So what I'm feeling is that because nasturtium will eventually begin to trellis over the base, and that's fine because it's a beautiful plant and a flower. Whereas with this bean, it's a bush bean. We'll probably have to do a little training or plant it in a different system. If you have multiple systems, then maybe that's what we'll do, is plant our beans lower, bush beans in the bottom of our second system, and let our flowers be the main base of this system. So we'll save that. So remember to think about how a plant grows and the life cycle of the plant, how you want to harvest off of it, if it's trellisable or trainable, so that you have the best outcome for all your plants. So we're going to reserve this one bean for later, but we're going to go ahead and load nasturtium. You took your gloves off, so you can't help.
Well, I'm going to be labeling.
Oh, and so while I'm loading this first set, we'll have Julie talk about the different types of labeling for the system.
Mhm. So just about the importance of labeling, right? We labeled really carefully when we planted these. You want to know what's in there, and you want kids to know what's in there so that they can keep an eye on it. So today I'm just using painter's tape, and if you use painter's tape, you definitely want a permanent marker. The ideal thing is a garden marker because this is waterproof. So what I'm going to do, I have zinnia written on here. This is where I like to be precise because I learned this on the bear, where I can use that to do labels. And then I can put this directly onto the tower. The other thing that you can do is if you just want to use these same labels, excuse me, Michelle, like you can just take this and pop it in into the same place as your plant. You can also use sticky notes, but just definitely make sure that you do label. And then it's really good to put like a date on there. So you can either do the date that you planted these, or you can do the date that you loaded them into the tower.
So for the purposes of this being a lab and we want to experience as many different situations as possible to provide the best training, I'm actually going to overload this system. So I am going to plant in every pod so that we can take pictures of what an overloaded system looks like and the effects. We're not looking for necessarily a successful tower. We're looking for challenges and successes of that. So we'll plant this first tower pretty tight, and then we'll plant a second tower ideally to see what happens when you overcrowd a tower versus planting a tower staggered. So I'm going to actually plant every pod with the different types of plants we have here. So you'll see here, you're just popping it right in, and make sure you don't push it in. So especially little eager hands when you're working with, and then aggressive teenage boys as well, will shove the plants in there. So for purposes, can you give me just an empty pot?
Okay.
So just for purposes of the training, if we were to shove it in there and push it down, you see here the rock wool is smashed. That means water will not be able to get to the plant. It could damage the plant as well. And then trying to dig it, I mean, this comes out easy because it's empty, but you can see that it's just going to prohibit. And also, if you smash it in and compact it and turn the pump on, water could possibly splash out and get everywhere. We've had overflowed and pumps that have gone rogue and come into a mess on the floor. So please just make sure that your eager hands or your students just drop it in and then gently tap it to where it settles at the bottom of the pot.
Michelle, what is that you planted? I'm going to label this.
This is the kale.
Okay.
So the bottom one is our nasturtium, and remembering that that's going to begin to get nice and full at the base of this system. This second one is zinnia, and so what Julie is doing is actually, are you labeling it above what it is or on what it is?
I labeled above.
Right. So this will reflect what's under it, and for each one we'll do that.
You know what, you did the whole thing around.
Yes, this is the same thing.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll move it to, so this whole circle is going to be zinnia, and then I'll put a kale for that, just one label for that round.
And if in the case where you don't plant, so for this particular installation, we're planting the same thing per level. But if you mix it up, and that's okay, you don't have to plant the same thing. You can alternate. If you want to do one plant per, just please make sure to label each one. So for example, if Julie were to say that this is only the one, she would put the tape right under what that plant is, and then just have labels all around. The great thing about painter's tape is it will not damage your system. We also don't want water to get on the outside of this system because it has minerals in it, and these minerals do tend to calcify. And so you'll notice after your first use, and if I had an open system, you can see there's calcium deposits. As much as we try to clean and scrub, you're going to have leftover calcium. But you do want your outside of your system to look as beautiful as possible. So keeping the outside white and clean when it's wet so that it doesn't yellow. Over time, it can yellow, especially with the lights and calcium enriched water or minerally enriched water. It can begin to yellow your system, and you will see calcium around your seams. So making sure that you keep your system white is just best practice to make sure that you get the best life. These are very expensive, and you want to get as many uses out of them as you can, and that happens with good maintenance. So we've got our 3 levels loaded. We'll load a couple of more, and then we'll come back and talk about how to set your timers.
So the other really important thing you want to do is make sure that the pH is right in your tower. So again, you want to read the instructions really carefully. Ours said to get 5 milliliters of water, so that's what I have in this vial. I took that out of the tank after we had put our nutrients in and run the pump for a while. And then the instructions say that you add 5 drops of the solution that was provided. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I add my drops, I put the lid on, and I shake it up. And then I have this color gradient. And so what we do is set this here and then try to match the color from the vial with the color that is on the paper. So that could be 7.0 on this side. Let me try it with 6.5. I think it's probably, I'm going to go with 6.5. So then I'm going to look back on here to see if that's acceptable. And it says optimal pH level should be 5.5 to 6.5. So we actually don't have to do anything. If we did need to do something, if the pH was either too low or too high, this comes with a pH plus. So if it was too low, then we would need to add that. And a pH minus. So if it's too high, then we would take it down. And with this, again, it tells you how much to add. So you're usually doing that with like teaspoons, right? With our minerals, we were using cups. With this, we would be using teaspoons. And the other important thing with this, even more than with this, is like you need your eye protection because this stuff is like these are acids and so or bases, and so those can really harm your fingers or your eyes. So please be prepared for that. You also have to shake things up to make sure that it's ready. When you do that, make sure you already have your protection on and that this is covered, fully closed so that you can shake it up first. And so then if you did have trouble, you would add a teaspoon at a time according to these instructions, let the pump run again for 15 minutes, test again, and then add more if you needed to.
Okay, we have a fully loaded tower here. We've got our nasturtium on the bottom, our zinnium, our kale. Those are 3 full layers. And then we have some mixed layers here. So on our top traditional pod, we have a couple of lettuces and a couple of mints. A mint takes a long time to germinate, so they're super tiny, and they take a while. Days to maturity are pretty extensive, especially from the germination phase from seed, and they also are invasive. So we're gonna watch the mint to see if it throws out sisters in this particular soilless environment. It's a great opportunity for us to see what it does. Then in our herb layers, so these are smaller pods as you can see. So for this particular system, it comes with 2 layers for herbs, and you can plant them pretty tightly. Herbs do not mind being crowded. They tend to thrive, and if you've ever seen like a little herb plant that has multiple herbs in it, it's usually densely planted, and it'll survive just fine without splitting it. But again, these are test theories, so we're just gonna see how it works. So here we have 2 chive plants. Again, chives take a long time to come, and these were our 2 little babies that were left. So we're gonna see what happens with that. We have some cilantro. Cilantro is finicky. It's a very presumptuous plant. It does what it wants. Sometimes it wants to germinate, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it likes light, sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to see how these plants do. We've got some really tightly planted lemon basil. So later on, we're going to thin these out. But they're so cute that we couldn't resist leaving them in there. And then on this side, we have some parsley. So that's our tower. Julie is going to label them all. She's already gone over how to label them right now. So she'll do like singular labels for the ones that are examples of 1 or 2. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to run our pump and set our timers.
So one of the things that these systems will come with is some sort of timer. I generally try to think about, like, you want to reflect what the daylight is like. So on this one, and I'm not turning it on yet because these are LED and they are blinding, which also means that these LEDs are a lot stronger than sunlight. So you can do some experimenting with this. Generally, I still think about 16 hours is what I would do, but if you want to go down to 12, you can go down to 12. On this system, if you want the light on, you push the pins out, but before you do that, there's usually a arrow that's where you have to set what time it is currently. So here it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. In the white side is the daytime, so we're going to make sure that all these pins during the day are pushed to the outside of this dial. Here is 6 a.m., so we could have it come on around 6 a.m. So then this is overnight. So I'm pushing these pins towards the center. And then we can have it go on or stay on till about like 7 o'clock at night. Right? So in this case, that's like 13 hours. So we'll try 13 hours. There's 2 options. It's either on all the time or on according to the to this timer. So I'm going to bump it over there. And then it's ready to plug in. So I'm going to plug 2 things in. I'm going to plug in the pump, making sure that it's set to indoor, which means that it'll turn on for about 15 minutes every 45 minutes. So it cycles on and off. And then that the lights are going to be on during the day. So I'm going to turn these on and I'm going to blind myself. And then that's it. And we'll say goodbye. So first we'll do the pump. We'll make sure it's on indoor. And then we'll turn on the sun. And then we'll make sure that these lights are relatively close to the plants. And then as they grow, you can move the plants outward. So you guys are so excited for y'all to use your towers, whatever tower system you use, whatever controlled environment system you use. We're very excited for the district to be utilizing these in the classroom. We've talked quite a bit about how you can use different areas of your curriculum to support this, whether it be science, math, decompression with the sounds of the water, measuring. So please, you take advantage of those opportunities to incorporate different lessons into your everyday curriculum utilizing the Tower Garden. We'll have more videos for you coming up. We're excited. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you soon.